You know, if a business is asking for a tip and they're not giving it to staff, it's 100% deceiving in my opinion, because what's the point? You know, the consumer or the customer thinks that that money is going to the service workers who deserve it, and a business is pocketing. I think that's a question for the labor board for sure.
I think it's illegal. If it's not illegal, it should be illegal. Everything that is designed to go to the server should be in the server's pockets.
Tips are for the staff, the price is for the business.
I think that it's meant to go towards the person that you're getting the service from. If the owner's taking it, then to me, that's a little bit misleading.
If they work in an establishment that relies on tips, the tips should be going to them. I wouldn't, like, if we're tipping for service, we're not tipping the company. The company's already making the profits from, I guess, the food and everything of that.
It's misleading, wrong, not nice, unless the owners themselves are working at the front lines. But even then, they probably make enough money that they probably shouldn't be doing that.
Welcome back. Who is getting all those extra tips? If you ask, you'll be told that it's split among the staff, including the people customers don't see. But others have their hands in the virtual tip jar, including software companies that provide the payment service. They are getting their cut too. Ritesh, people don't even think of that.
People don't think about it, but what happens is these software companies, whether it be the point of sale terminal, whether it be at the pin pad if they're separate, they take a cut. They do take a percentage. Now, the reason they take that percentage is A, to facilitate the transaction, B, they have to pay the card issuer as well a percentage of the sale. So clearly, the greater the number, the more money that they make, and they take a cost per transaction. Now, there's other elements of it as well. There's security protocols, there's certificates, I get that. But these software companies are making an incredible amount of money. We're talking billions of dollars that they're making for simply facilitating the transaction.
We actually got bills passed in a couple different cities, Philadelphia, states like California, making it illegal for employers or companies to deduct any kind of credit card or other processing fees from workers' tips. We actually got a bill passed in Congress in 2018 because President Trump tried to make tips in the U.S. the property of owners rather than workers, and that went over really poorly. And actually, we now have federal law that says tips are exclusively the property of workers now and forever, and that includes these processing fees, which should not come out of workers' tips. They should belong exclusively to them. Now, there are a number of restaurants moving to this service charge or automatic gratuity model. In some cases, we see employers trying to take a portion of those service charges. In those cases as well, we believe service charges should be the property of workers. Customers believe that the gratuity that they're leaving is the property, is going to the workers. And in most cases, they think it's on top of a wage. Most people don't know that in most of America and many provinces in Canada, at least a portion of those tips are used to offset workers' wages, at least a portion of their wage. And that's really problematic. I do want to say one thing we haven't raised is that even to this day, I told you a racist history, there's a racist present, which is that actually there's research from Cornell University across this country that shows that tipping in America, at least, and I am positive this is true in Canada as well, yes, it's somewhat based on the individual, but it's very much based on that individual's biases, so that it's really very much based on the race and gender of the server, and Black women always get tipped less, on average about $6 less than white men. And so this is an ongoing inequity, and it is why these practices are so problematic.
Ryan, we keep hearing, at least anecdotally, that sometimes employers take part of these tips. And I know I've started to ask when I hit yes. And people are also very nervous about sharing that.
Yeah, for sure. I've seen some egregious practices. I've been in the restaurant industry since I was 18 years old. And, I worked at a place where the owner took 7% of sales from the tip pool. So now let's just imagine that this tips are only 14%. That means he's taking half the tips. And just to put that on the other side of things, if a restaurant, if the profit margins are only, let's call them 5%, you know, the owner would be easier just to take the 5% from the tips and then run the business as zero, pay no tax at all, maybe run a loss, use that as an opportunity not to pay creditors. Every restaurant is its own little fiefdom, and you know, some of the practices are really, really terrible. So, I mean, look, if consumers are curious about that and want to ask more questions, I encourage that entirely. I think what would be even better would be to do away with tipping entirely.
Ellen, do people worry enough about where that tip money actually goes?
Well, I think we know that the people in the kitchen work really hard. I don't mind tipping those people as well, because I don't think it's right that only some restaurant staff get tipped and the others don't. But I don't like at all the idea of the owner dipping in, or you know, that Trump saying that the whole thing belongs to the owner. That's just crazy. It's just wrong. And because tips have been around for so long, they're not really regulated in the way that other things are. It's just sort of something that we know happens, but we wouldn't even know where to go to complain if we were unhappy with a restaurant. You know, who would take our complaint?
You know, and here's something that I think has happened in the last few years, and not just in restaurants. So if you go for a service like a haircut or a manicure, it used to be the rule that if it was the owner performing the service, you did not tip.
Yeah.
Well, that seems to have changed. I can't remember when, like, was it, I don't know, 5 years ago? But suddenly an owner who probably takes a percentage from the haircutters that work there suddenly expects you to give them a big tip.
Greedy, right? Like that's, I don't know how else to put it. It's, that's just pure greed. And this speaks to the earlier point as well around who actually gets the money. Who actually gets the tip? Should there be new legislation? With other elements of a business, there's elements of transparency. You got to put your terms of services out there. Well, should businesses then be required that are accepting tips to say this is who's getting, this is the percentage of the ways the tips are being divvied up? So there's transparency. So this type of behavior just doesn't happen. But we're nowhere close to getting to that stage at this point.
Lauren, again, with all those other services where suddenly an owner who is probably collecting some other percentage, I mean, I don't even know quite how it happened, but it did.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even remember not tipping owners who perform services, like the owner of a hair salon. I didn't know that was a rule. I wish I had. I probably have saved some money. But I mean, kind of the rhetoric that's kind of going around about tipping now is just like, you just tip. And sometimes hair services and nail services,
they're expensive.
Incredibly expensive. And when they turn around the pin pad and it's like hundreds of dollars, and it's like, do you want to tip 25%, 30%? And like, that's like a lot. Like, I used to be able to be like, here's an extra 20, you did a great job, but it's not the case anymore. It's like, here's $60.
I was at an offsite meeting this morning, and one of the participants told me he just had a haircut, and there was that he got like the evil eye for tipping 20%, and there was a 30% option there.
Wow.
Honestly,
for a men's haircut.
Yeah, they have the words written at my hair salon next to the percentages. So 18%, okay. 20%,
Oh,
I hate that.
25%, great. 30, wow. And I'm like, you did a great job, wow, but I'm not a gazillionaire. I can't tip you $100 on top of this.
But that's by design, right? These are what we call dark patterns, right? Where what they're trying to do is convince somebody to click on a particular button. That's why when you, even like if you look at terms and conditions, and I get back to that, the I agree is this big green button, but the I don't agree or I decline, it's a small little button hidden somewhere, and it's by design, right? There's a lot of thought that goes into that.
And there's a lot of psychology that goes
Absolutely.
into it too. We'll be right back with more of the Zoomer.